I'll just go right to it. I'll turn right over things to Minister Nicolaides to introduce Bill 51. Go ahead, Minister.
Okay, thanks so much. Yeah, I was very happy to introduce Bill 51 just a few moments ago in the Legislative Assembly. That's the Education Amendment Act 2025. By amending the Education Act, we're hoping to respond to feedback that we've received from many of our partners in education system and, of course, of Albertans. The Education Amendment Act 2025 will make a couple of changes to the Education Act. In particular, it will help ensure and reflect the wide range of programming and school choice for independent schools, strengthen democratic accountability regarding elected trustees, increase clarity and efficiency in the teacher discipline process, align joint use planning agreement requirements between school boards and municipalities, allow displaced Jasper residents to vote and seek election in municipal and school board elections, and make changes to property ownership of new schools. Now, to go into more details, of course, as I mentioned, these changes have been gathered with feedback from Albertans and our education partners, and most importantly, reflect our changing education landscape, where these series of changes will help improve language and clarity in several areas of Alberta's education system. I'm confident that together these changes will create a stronger and more efficient education system. Firstly, the changes will reflect a wide range of programming, as I mentioned, and replace the term private school in the Education Act with the term independent school throughout the legislation. This change aligns with feedback that we've received and has been requested of us by the Association of Independent Schools and Colleges in Alberta to ensure that Alberta legislation accurately recognizes the wide range of educational options that are available to families. Regarding democratic accountability, the amendments will remove the ability of a public, separate, or francophone school board to disqualify an elected trustee over code of conduct breaches to leave those decisions where they belong in the hands of voters. These changes would respond to public and education partner feedback and align with the Municipal Government Act, which stops municipal councils from removing councillors for breach of a municipality's code of conduct and ensure that we have a consistent approach across elected bodies. Regarding changes to the Education Act, we're also making changes that will improve clarity and efficiency in Alberta's teacher discipline process by allowing administrators, namely superintendents, to assign certain reporting requirements and other complaint roles to other individuals. We will also work to remove duplicate reporting requirements to lower administrative burden, allow school boards to be notified regarding ongoing complaints and disciplinary steps when a teacher or educational staff is employed by a different school board, clarify that the chair of the hearing committee may apply to the court for an order of compliance when necessary. Additionally, we will also make changes to introduce a $250 fee for appeals, which would be refundable if an appeal is successful. If passed, these changes to the professional conduct and competency, if passed changes to the professional conduct and competency teacher and teacher leader regulation would be made as well, outlining the details of the appeal fee. Additional changes to the Education Act would ensure public, separate, and francophone school boards are not required to enter into joint use planning agreements where a municipality in which they operate has also been exempted from such requirement through legislation enacted by municipal affairs. This change would prevent conflicts where school boards are legally required to enter into a joint use and planning agreement, but the municipality is not. Additionally, changes would grant the Minister of Education regulation-making authority to allow flexibility to set criteria, requirements, and exemptions for joint use planning agreements that are complementary to those laid out by the Minister of Municipal Affairs. These changes respond to feedback from both our municipalities and school boards and would promote greater stability and teamwork between education and municipal partners. Unfortunately, many Jasper residents that have been displaced by the July 2024 wildfires are still unable to return to their homes. proposed changes to the Education Act would align with planned changes to the Local Authorities Election Act to ensure that Jasper residents displaced by the wildfires can vote and run as a candidate in 2025 and 2026 school board elections. These changes highlight the challenges faced by affected families and ensure they maintain their democratic right. Finally, the Education Act would also be changed in support of Alberta Infrastructure's real property governance strategy. This change means that Alberta's government would own new kindergarten to grade 12 school buildings and playgrounds and lease them back to school boards and charter schools for operation and maintenance. If passed, Alberta Infrastructure will work with education partners and share details with school boards before any regulatory changes are made. If passed in whole, the changes to legislation would come into effect at a couple of different times. Changes related to independent school definition, teacher discipline, trustee accountability, and joint use planning would come into effect upon proclamation. Changes related to voting rights of Jasper residents would come into effect with changes to Municipal Affairs Local Authorities Election Act that are part of Municipal Affairs Election Statutes Amendment Act planned for the spring of 25. And changes related to school property ownership would come into effect at the same time as the Appropriation Act 2025. Alberta's government is committed to a strong, accountable, and responsive education system that meets the needs of students, teachers, and communities. These proposed changes respond to the province's evolving education landscape and the valuable feedback that we've received from Albertans and education partners, and will help create a more efficient and responsive education system. Concludes my remarks, and happy to pass things over to Garrett and take questions from.
All right, folks. So remember, one question, one follow-up. We don't have a media mic here, so we have time for questions. So we'll most likely get around to you if you have more questions. So let's just raise our hands for now, and we'll call it. We saw Lisa first, and I'll go Janet. And then.
Hi, Minister. I think you mentioned something about this aligning with Minister McIver's bill, but it doesn't align exactly because he's eliminating codes of conduct for councils entirely. You're allowing school boards to keep codes of conduct. They just can't boot a trustee over a breach of that conduct, right? So I'm wondering, why are codes of conduct still a positive thing for school boards to have? Why aren't you doing what Minister McIver is doing? Why isn't that equivalent?
Yeah, well, we're happy to see how things continue to progress. I know there's been, I think, more examples and situations with municipalities and challenges related to codes of conduct. We haven't typically seen a lot of those challenges in our education system, but we want to make sure, because I know Minister McIver has made changes, to with respect to recall for municipal councillors and others, to strengthen the principle of democratic accountability. So we're approaching it from the same standpoint that we want to strengthen the principle of democratic accountability, and thus ensure that a school board cannot just fire a trustee on its own volition, and that's something that needs to be done by voters.
Okay, and yet on that issue as well, when we spoke with department officials this morning, the briefing materials mentioned a petition seems to have spurred this change regarding code of conduct and disqualifying trustees. And they said that it was in relation to a petition after a Red Deer school board trustee was disqualified for violating their code of conduct. So I'm wondering, and they also said there was no engagement on this decision. So I'm wondering why you're taking that petition and allowing it to steer public policy. I mean, should we interpret that to mean that you think that it was unfair or unjust for Monique LaGrange to be disqualified from the Red Deer Catholic School Board?
Well, on the latter part, I know, of course, that there's been some legal proceedings related to that, and may still be ongoing, if my memory's correct. So I don't want to provide any commentary on any ongoing litigation that may be underway. I think we have heard from Albertans on this issue. I know we received a number of emails about trustees being accountable to the people that elected them, and I think supporting the principle of democratic accountability is key, and I think we should always look for areas in which we can strengthen democratic accountability. So we've seen that opportunity to do that here, and happy to make those steps.
Can you give us an idea of how many emails you've gotten on that topic?
Oh gosh, I think it's hard for me to say, but there's certainly a volume that's noteworthy. Hard for me to contextualize that in a particular number, but certainly received a number of emails about and comments from Albertans about trustee accountability and that the voters should be able to have the final say.
Janet, let's go to Janet next.
Yeah, kind of in the same vein, and I guess I'm just wondering if this is in the same theme we hear from the leaders of your government in pushing back against cancel culture. Is that what this is supposed to be? To say you can't cancel an elected official who has views that are potentially hateful?
No, I don't think this has anything to do with that. This is, as I mentioned a moment ago, primarily about making sure that we are strengthening democracy in the province and strengthening democratic principles. I think most people would agree that the voters should always have the final say over who their representative is or is not. And so by making these changes, we'll ensure that a school board doesn't have the ability to override the will of the electorate in who they chose as their trustee.
I'm wondering, though, if there is a vulnerability here because the constituency, the number of people who would be qualified to be defined as electors in a francophone school board or a Catholic school board that doesn't have a lot of voters that would be eligible to vote for them. I mean, we're talking about a potentially very small number of people who could boot a trustee. So does this not open school boards to the same problem that small municipalities were having, where people were recalling their councillors over sometimes routine decisions?
Well, the change that we're making simply states and provides detail that a code of conduct can exist within a school board, but that a school board is not able to remove a trustee for breach of the code of conduct. So that's the change that we're making, simply to illustrate that the school board cannot remove a trustee based on any violation to a code of conduct.
I know what change you're making, but the question isn't about the change. The question is about the risk that this presents for a small active group of people to boot somebody who doesn't deserve it.
Right, but I don't know if that risk is there because, of course, the school board will not be able to remove that person, a trustee, if they have not breached the code of conduct. So that will be a decision that the voters will have to make at a subsequent time.
So we'll go here first.
Okay. Cindy with the Edmonton Journal. Just following up on that then, because we were also told this afternoon, not morning, at the tech briefing that it'll be 40% of electors within that ward, which is similar to municipalities. But I think the question that we're all sort of trying to understand here is it not, like, how is that fair for smaller wards with less electors? Like, how do you make that fair?
Yeah, well, again, I think the most important thing here is that, we make these changes to strengthen that democratic principle and democratic accountability, right? That has to be key and something that we always strive to achieve. And, there can be different parameters, of course, different school with different school divisions and different school boards. However, we want to make sure that at the end of the day, voters have the final choice as to who they're able to select as their trustee.
So, not my second, just to clarify, will different parameters come into play then? So it's not 40%, for example, and more to do with, I guess, the elector population within a ward?
Well, we're still happy to iron out some of those details. As I mentioned, the amendments that we've just tabled in the legislature help to ensure that school boards are prevented from firing a trustee related to a breach of a code of conduct. So those are the pieces that we're addressing in the bill. Other pieces may need to be addressed in subsequent regulation, but that's the key element that we hope to address in the bill.
Colin, go ahead.
Yeah, so similar question. 40% is not the same in every ward. Take the Red Deer Catholic School District. There's one ward that has thousands and thousands of voters. They elect 5 trustees. Then there's another ward that has only a few hundred. So 40% is not an equal weight. If the idea is to make sure this is democratic, why not take into account the different size of wards and of districts?
Sure, and those pieces can be explored in further detail. But as I mentioned, at a future time. But as I mentioned, the amendments that we've just tabled to the legislature will stop school boards from being able to fire a trustee for a breach to that school board's code of conduct. And by doing so, we want to make sure that a voter's choice is upheld. So should the bill be passed, a school board will no longer have the ability to remove or disqualify a trustee for breach of their code of conduct.
Okay, and another thing that was mentioned on the JUPAs, municipal affairs and education, they both heard from municipalities and school boards that there have been challenges in establishing these agreements. Can you get into what were the challenges that you heard?
Yeah, of course, and it can vary, on on different circumstances. But obviously, in some municipalities where you have a limited site availability, it can become particularly challenging. There's a lot of competing interests for municipal infrastructure, for school board infrastructure, and even on the school board side, of course, there's competition between public, separate, francophone, and other organizations. So there can be a lot of competing interests and challenges. And the main aspect, though, that we want to address with this bill, because the Ministry of Municipal Affairs has already provided details to exempt some municipalities from entering into these. So we just want to mirror that because, of course, we don't want to create a circumstance where a school board is required by law to enter into a joint use planning agreement when the municipality is not. So we just want to help to create alignment between the two pieces of legislation.
Well, go ahead.
Jasmine King, Global Edmonton. Just regarding kind of the trustee changes that we've been speaking about, what tools are really left for school boards now if there is a trustee that is breaching conduct, but maybe it hasn't reached the full threshold? What tools are available for them to still maybe discipline in a way these trustees?
Yeah, important point. Though there are still pieces that are in place, of course, the code of conduct still remains. So the board has the discretion that a board typically has as a constituted body to determine any of the kinds of sanctions that they believe would be appropriate. So that power and ability is still there, and that's up to the board to determine what they believe is most appropriate. We just want to remove the ability of the board to completely remove a duly elected trustee.
Follow up? No. Okay, seeing no one on the line, we'll do one more round of the room.
Can we just get into the business about the Alberta teachers, the AGPC? I'm forgetting what it even stands for.
Teaching Profession Commission.
Thank you, Teaching Profession Commission.
Here to help.
Why this $250 fee for only certain parties to appeal a decision not to proceed with a complaint?
So the $250 fee that we'll be implementing is for appeals of decisions that have been made by the Teaching Profession Commission. If memory serves me correct, I think the Alberta Teachers Association had a similar, if not exact, fee and structure related to appeals. And, we want to ensure that of course, the appeal fee would be returned if the appellant is successful, but we want to ensure that we create an environment where an individual seeking to appeal has thought carefully about their ultimate chances of success. We need the teacher discipline process to be able to really operate effectively, and an important part of that is speed. And so if we can give individuals a little bit more pause for consideration before they file an appeal, I think that can help ensure that we smooth out the teacher discipline process and ensure greater speed of decisions and transparency.
I think you and I are going to have to disagree on whether it's currently operating effectively. There's certainly a lot of evidence that it isn't. How much do you think that putting this additional roadblock will reduce the bog of cases getting stuck in the system and not being moved along?
Yeah, of course, the $250 fee for appeal is one element of other elements that we're introducing. Of course, it's a new process, as you know well, and the new Teaching Profession Commission has been in operation since January 1st of 23, and is taking over the complaints from the Alberta Teachers Association, new complaints coming in. So the organization is working aggressively as a new entity to manage, and we've seen some areas as a new organization where we can make improvements. And I think I've always said and stipulated that if there's opportunities to make changes to any current practice, process, or procedure, then we should capitalize that, make changes. to help whatever process of government is operating. And I think this is an example, such as giving the superintendent more authority to delegate reporting requirements to other individuals. So this can all help streamline the process. So I'm quite confident that these changes will help provide more streamlined operation.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm wondering, okay, so I hear that you got a lot of emails, but why not do more broad consultation before bringing forward this legislation? Why do it after?
Well, again, I think that we've gone in our intention as a government has been very clear in terms of strengthening democratic accountability generally. And so I don't think that that's a secret, that we want to make sure that voters have the strongest possible say. We've made very similar, if not further, changes with respect to city councillors and municipal elections. And there's that opportunity here to make a small change that would simply make sure that a school board cannot fire a trustee if they've breached the code of conduct. Again, as per the question earlier, school board can still maintain their code of conduct and can still impose sanctions on an individual if they believe that appropriate, as any board is allowed to do in general board operations and management. But we don't want a board being able to remove a trustee. That's a matter of democratic accountability. So I think it's important we maintain that. So go ahead.
We have time for one more follow-up, and then last question after that. So do you have a follow-up, Catherine?
Yeah, so even if, in cases where the school boards did the sanctions, if that trustee is ignoring it, doesn't matter, it's up to a petition?
If they're ignoring it, the school board, again, has the power and authority to take additional steps. That's within the discretion of the school board to take the steps that they believe is most appropriate. And I would hope the individuals that have elected that trustee are watching, and then, at the next election, have an opportunity to make a decision for themselves about what they want to do when it comes to their trustee.
Time for one more question, if there's any. Seeing none, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.